Hey everyone, in this video what I'm going to be doing is giving you a bit of a recap of the information I learned from this recent event and then finishing up with my impressions overall on the game. So as for what I've learned new, I'm going to categorize this real generally into a section on characters and a second section on the campaign. So let's start with characters first. So it's important to note that I'm starting with this because CA has said this is the main focus of their game. And I'm going to break up the discussion here into two subcategories. Again, I'm all about organization. So characters, two subsections. One is going to be about self-development of individual characters, and then the other one is going to be the inter-character relationships. So you have those two aspects. So let's start with self-development, just looking at strictly at one character. Well, starting off, you're going to be able to recruit a character from a pool of characters. Unfortunately, you won't be able to rename them, but you will have a variety of named characters already there. And then when you choose characters, you'll have to be careful because they're going to start off with different base traits. And then also they're going to fall into one of several types. These can be the strategist, the vanguard, the champion, the sentinel, or the commander. The strategist, for instance, is going to give you various campaign buffs on like movement and how your armies operate, etc. Vanguard is like what we saw with Sun Ren, where in battle she can operate ahead of the battle line. She can do offensive attacks, at ranged, supportive stuff. The champion is going to be excellent in melee, a duelist. Sentinel might be someone who can kind of stand strong and buff up their line. Commander has a large aura for morale buffs, etc. So you're going to have to be very careful about this, but there's a lot of kind of dynamic classes in here to play within and then specialize within as well. So I'm very excited for that. So that's when you start off with your characters. And then eventually, these characters will grow over time. I do want to note here that CA has completely removed agents. So now characters are again going to be the focus, and anything that agents could do in the past are now going to be wrapped up into characters. So this is going to be quite interesting. I'm eager to see what you guys think about this, but I think it's cool where stuff that would otherwise be the purview of your spy or your champion is now going to be done by a named character who has the fully fleshed out capabilities of a main character, as opposed to these agents who were cool and named but were kind of hemmed in by their classification. Now that characters can do all this, it really kind of rounds them out and makes them much more functional, so I like that. So these characters then can kind of start off with some skills and traits, but over time they're going to progress and gain skills either through actions that you do and you'll tech them up deliberately, or they'll passively get some traits added to them. You can also then equip them with different items and mounts, I believe. So these will give them buffs, and then as well as when you defeat enemy characters, you can snatch their items and equipment in like a post-battle loot type system, which is cool. Another thing about kind of the self-development of these characters is, again, not only have they kind of wrapped up the agent functioning into the characters, but they've also kind of swept up recruitment and put it under the characters. So as you may know, recruitment now occurs under each character. The character then basically on the campaign map can recruit a certain contingent. I believe it's up to 6 different units. So the characters have access, depending on their type, to different types of units. So a commander might have access to more archers, or might have access to cavalry, or might have access to artillery. So they're going to be recruiting that, and then they form together in a coalition with other commanders into a larger army. But the minimal stack is going to be, I think, up to 6 tied to an individual character. The other things that are going to be tied to the individual character are going to be, I believe, unit abilities and formations. And again, another thing that is kind of being wrapped up under this character is army tradition. So previously, armies would stand and have traditions independent of its leader. That has now been done away with, and it's been, again, like I said, put in under the character. So this is all stuff that potentially is getting cut, but it's being reworked and put into all kind of, it's just added to the pile of what a character is. So it could be overloading it, but we'll have to see. It's definitely putting the emphasis on characters. The last thing I will note here about kind of this character arc is that eventually these characters will age over time, and there is permanent death for the characters. It's not like Warhammer where your legendary lords are essentially invulnerable and will be just wounded for several turns. No, these characters, when they die, they die. And they're going to be even more fragile if you play the records or the historical version, in the sense that they're more so mere mortals, as opposed to the version of, the romance one where they're single entities and they have a bit more of a health pool that makes them more tanky. So yeah, that's kind of the arc. Another thing built into kind of the self-development aspect of characters is going to be the spy mechanic, and this is going to be very, very interesting. It's kind of a new mechanic overall. And the way this works is that over time, your characters can actually turn into spies. So what this means, if I'm understanding it correctly, is you can recruit a spy, you can then send it over to the enemy. That spy then gets kind of embedded in their government. The enemy thinks that it's a character working for them, and for all intents and purposes, they're kind of controlling that character. But on your turn, you can actually continue to take actions as that character. So it's really kind of a weird hybrid system. Essentially how it works is once your character is within the enemy's government, he'll be reporting back to you. So wherever that character is, you'll know where they are. They'll give you some vision on what's going on. If they're in a city, it'll tell you probably what buildings, what units are there, etc. Maybe you'll get some intel on how the economy is doing in that province. And what's also cool is you can tell that character to take actions on your behalf. Which is going to be really interesting. And the way these kind of actions work is it's all built on top of this system of cover. So what happens essentially is when you send this spy out and he lays dormant for a while, he'll build up his cover, he'll build up his spy network, and the enemy may get more trust in him, they may promote him to higher offices, and the higher up and up they go, the more the enemy faction is going to trust them, the more their cover grows. And what happens is when you go to take actions with that character, you have limited actions, but the actions that you could do could be stuff like lowering trade income or opening a city gate in the event of a siege, or perhaps you can incite a civil war. So you can take different actions as that character, but every time you do that action, it's going to do a hit to your cover. So whatever cover you have built up is like a resource that you then spend. And if your cover gets too low, you can get exposed. And I think at that point, the enemy is going to kick them out. I'm not sure if they have the option to kill them outright, but I think for the most part, they'll just kick them out. And then you have to rescue them from that province. But it's very, very interesting. I love this dynamic. It's going to be super cool having spies long-term embedded in enemy factions. And what you have to note is, you're not only embedding spies in the enemy's ranks, but you may also have spies at home, and you may have to, do some counterintelligence to root out these spies. And what this all means is that in head-to-head campaigns, things are going to get crazy. So that's about it for the self-development of characters. Let's move on to the next level of character discussion, which is going to be the inter-character relationships. So when we're talking between characters, a couple things come to mind. The first is family tree is confirmed. Second is going to be that faction heirs and kind of those dynamics are confirmed. You can name a faction heir and kind of line up your dynastic lineage. The other thing that kind of governs everyone, not just within your faction or your family tree, is going to be this social system of GUANXI. And it basically tracks the friendships and rivalries, the loyalties and disloyalties between characters. And it has this big map of, like I said, the social relationship between characters. And this will then impact how characters interact with one another. So if characters, for instance, don't like each other, then it'll make actions done to one another difficult. If you're trying to sway a character to join your faction, but for instance, there's an enemy there, then he won't want to do that because, well, he's a sworn enemy. Whereas if, you have two friends and you're able to turn one of them to come to your side, well, then their friend is more likely to join you as well. So you have all that going on. It'll tie into in-battle banter where characters are going to kind of throw insults at one another or perhaps praises if they admire each other. These relationships will be something that you develop over time through active, measures, or they could be kind of passive and baked in, or predetermined, I should say. And what I mean by that is Liu Bei and his two oath brothers. That's something that at the start of the game is going to be built in and unbreakable. So you'll have a mix between these kind of predetermined relationships, brother, sister, stuff like that, and then these kind of dynamic over time relationships that are built up. That's all pretty cool. Another thing that's interesting with this bond CA has done to bring it to life is that if a character dies, their kind of friendly character network is going to actually go into a period of mourning. So if Liu Bei, for instance, dies, his two blood brothers, for instance, or his oath-sworn brothers, are going to go into a period of mourning, which means for several turns, they're going to have a bit of a debuff. So this is all really cool, super dynamic. It makes the world feel lived in. It makes these relationships feel alive and real. So that's it for the characters from what I've learned so far. Let's move into the campaign. So thus far, CAA has been pretty tight-lipped at the moment. From some of the shots we've seen of the map, it seems like we're going to include huge swaths of China, which is going to include Taiwan and Korea. So expect those on the campaign map. Not sure if we're going to see tidbits of Japan and Vietnam, although I would say it's probably likely. What else? Oh yeah, when you're looking at the campaign map, there's going to be several turns per year. So I think CA, in one of the discussions I had with them, seemed to indicate that there'll be multiple seasons. So to me, it's probably 4 turns per year to indicate the different seasons. It could potentially be 2 turns per year, although I would be more eager to bet on 4. We'll see if that's confirmed soon. Another thing also with kind of the changing of the time, CA is also going to be introducing this day-night cycle, which is pretty cool. What it means is that over time, as you stare at the campaign map, if you're just sitting there, literally the clock's going to run by and you're going to see the sun rise and set, the moon rise and set. So it's just a visual element where the campaign map is going to, change visually. It's all very cool. But mind you that it has no impact on what's actually going on in the battle. It's not like, within a single turn, it's a single day. No, this just runs on a timer. If you were to sit there, there would be a day, 2 days, 3 days. It's however many days until you end your turn. It's not locked to the end turn or anything like that. Neither is it tied to anything like night battles. So for instance, if you want to play a night battle, it's not like you have to wait for the cycle to turn to night. It's completely decoupled. It's just a visual element. But at that, I think it's going to do a lot to change up the map and make it rich and, visually exciting. What else can we say about the campaign map? Well, if you look around, there's a lot of rich vibrancy. There are going to be these huge rivers that are going to be navigable, so they're going to help you with trade and troop transportation. Unfortunately, when I was speaking to CA, they did confirm that there are in fact no naval battles. So that's quite unfortunate. It seems like they're focusing their efforts elsewhere and have completely ditched the naval battles, which is, like I said, not too great if you were hoping to relive the Battle of the Red Cliffs. So it looks like naval battles are going to be something that are probably just auto-resolved, which is too bad. Taking a look around the campaign map, what you'll also be seeing is, structures. So as for the province system, the CA hasn't quite talked about it, and I don't think they're quite ready to. But like I said, if you look around the campaign map, you'll be seeing things like major cities with walls, and then what appear to be kind of minor pieces of infrastructure scattered about. CA is continuing to be tight-lipped on this, and I'm not quite sure what's going on. It would seem to be that, the ones with walls are definitely your major settlements, but what are those smaller bits of infrastructure? Are those going to be minor settlements? In the sense of what we've seen in Thrones of Britannia, where, minor settlements can't build walls and they're locked into a couple small choices in terms of what they can develop. That's possible. Another possibility is that they could be going the route of Empire, where all those little structures are actually part of the main city, but it's distributed infrastructure where an army that comes in can actually raid part of your infrastructure and it's not defended by walls. So we'll have to wait to see what that's and maybe CA has a completely different system altogether. We'll have to wait and see. More about the campaign itself. Talking about factions, CA seems to have confirmed that we have 11 playable warlords and therefore presumably 11 playable factions. Each faction is going to have its own faction-specific mechanics. These are going to be able to keep things fresh and can have quite significant differences, but CA has stated that you should not expect it to rise to the level of something like Warhammer 2, which had completely different campaign mechanics with its own rights and stuff like that. So don't expect it to be that level of crazy. Think more like what they did with the recent Rise of the Republic DLC. But either way, the more the merrier. The more flavor they can put in there, the more replay value. I'm all game. More stuff about the campaign. CA briefly mentioned that dilemmas and missions are going to appear. You can follow these along in the romance version. They're going to follow the Romance of the Three Kingdoms. And sometimes these quest chains are going to end in a special battle. Although don't expect that battle to be like the quest battles from Warhammer 2, where essentially if there was a quest battle, you would basically take an army and teleport to it. CA said that they're not doing that. Whatever these battles at the end of this kind of story chain or dilemma chain ends up being, it's going to be more seamlessly integrated into the campaign. So I have yet to see an example of that, but we'll see. I mean, it's cool that they're implementing these quest battles type things, but aren't going to make them as gimmicky and teleport-y and immersion breaking as we saw in Warhammer 2. So I'm eager to see how that turns out. So that's about it for what we've seen so far. I talk a bit more about stuff specific to the battle in that ambush gameplay on the main channel. But yeah, and we'll stay tuned for more news. I'm going to wrap up here with a bit of my impressions thus far. I do have to say, overall, things are looking very, very polished and very, very good. In terms of the news that we saw so far, I had a lot of eagerness for the things that they announced, but a lot of trepidation about whether CA could execute it. So far, from what I've seen, it does look good, but it's going to take more time to judge properly. Let's go over my major pros and my major cons. So the pros, the main one is going to be character focus. That's what CA is pushing, and they've really gone above and beyond to make that a reality. It's not just a marketing gimmick; it's definitely woven throughout the game, I should say. So you look at the duels, the spy mechanics; those are all great innovations that bring this focus on characters and their importance to life, makes you focus on them a lot more. You add to that, the in-game banter, the GUANXI social mechanic, the mourning period, all of that makes it very, very rich and immersive, and all tied to the characters. I also like the fact that they've kind of swept up army recruitment and formation and tied those to the characters as well. It will not only make you think about how you function in the campaign differently. So for instance, if you're looking to recruit artillery, it's no longer going to be a case of teching up your structures there, but more so finding the proper commander who can get artillery, wooing him to your faction, and doing it from there. So it really changes up your mindset. On top of the fact that this is all adding into a bit of how history worked at the time, where it was really focused on these characters and their contingents, a lot of warlords that would pack up their armies and then form coalitions. So I like that. The other big thing that, the big shoe that we're waiting to drop is going to be the province system. I'm eager to see what CA has done new. So yeah, that's it for my pros so far. I'm really liking it. So far it's polished. Duels are working much better than I had expected, so I'm all happy about that. What are the cons? Well, so far I can't really see anything like strategically that CA is doing that's bad. The only main con that I have with this title is that with all this added complexity, we often might risk that this complexity will breed incompetence in the AI. It might just overwhelm the AI. There may be ways to game the system, so I hope CA does turn a big eye towards that. So the big question, my big con here is, will it hold up? In the past, not necessarily when it comes to the AI, so that is still to be determined. But on the upside, one of the cool things is once they have all this complexity baked in, anytime it's human versus human, it's going to be so rich. So this means great things for head-to-head campaigns and multiplayer battles. So that is a pretty good saving grace. Even if CA's AI falls kind of flat in that sense, the human-on-human interactions are going to be so rich. So that's it for my impressions. Stay tuned for more as CA continues to roll out with more news, and I will definitely seek to cover history on this time period, so you get more understanding of the period and get more into it. But anyways, that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Stay tuned for more, and see you in the next one. Bye-bye.